Picture this. The biggest emergency meeting in galactic history, and everyone's absolutely losing their minds. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber is massive. Think of a football stadium carved out of living crystal and floating in space between 3 dying stars. Right now, it's packed wall to wall with representatives from hundreds of different worlds, and the noise is incredible. You got insect-like creatures clicking their mandibles in distress, crystalline beings that sound like wind chimes in a hurricane, and gas-based life forms whose panic creates these eerie whistling sounds that make your skin crawl. All of them are staring at the giant holographic display in the center of the chamber, watching their star maps turn red one system at a time. It's like watching a disease spread across the galaxy in real time. Every few minutes, another star system goes dark, another civilization goes silent, another world just stops existing. Admiral Cathera of the Zentari stands at the main podium, her 6 arms trembling as she reads off casualty reports that would make a military historian weep. She's a veteran of 3 galactic wars, seen her share destruction, but nothing like this. Her voice keeps cracking as she announces that 12 entire species have already abandoned their home worlds, not just evacuating a city or a continent, but packing up entire civilizations and running for their lives. The combined military might of 7 different civilizations, fleets that took centuries to build, got turned into space debris in less than a week. These aren't your garden-variety space pirates or territorial disputes we're talking about. The Devourers are something completely different, something that gives even the galaxy's oldest races nightmares. Imagine if someone took the worst parts of a virus, a machine and a hungry animal, then scaled it up to the size of cities. They're biomechanical horrors that don't just destroy planets. They consume them. Every piece of organic matter, every drop of water, every breath of atmosphere gets processed and absorbed into their ever-growing fleet. But here's the really terrifying part. They learn. After every battle, they adapt, use energy weapons. Next time they show up with better shields. Try biological warfare. They develop immunity faster than you can say plague. Launch surprise attacks? They've already figured out your strategy and have 3 countermeasures ready. The Council has thrown everything at them. Ancient superweapons pulled from museum vaults, desperate alliances between species that have been enemies for millennia, even their most advanced artificial intelligence systems running millions of battle simulations. Nothing works. If anything, the Devourers just get stronger with each victory, like they're feeding off the galaxy's desperation. The atmosphere in the chamber is thick with fear and hopelessness. You can see it in the way the Thorian ambassador keeps nervously grooming his feathers, how the silicon-based Christek representatives dim their internal lights when they think nobody's watching, and the way even the usually arrogant hegemony delegates have stopped making demands and started asking for help instead. These are civilizations that have survived for thousands of years, races that have conquered death itself, technologies that can reshape reality, and they're all absolutely terrified. In the middle of all this cosmic panic, there's something almost funny happening. Way in the back corner of this massive chamber, so far from the main action that most delegates probably forgot they were there, sits a small group that looks completely out of place. They're representing some tiny backwater planet called Earth that most of the galaxy had never heard of until about 50 years ago when they figured out how to build faster-than-light engines. Primitive stuff by galactic standards, basically strapping rockets to nuclear reactors and hoping for the best. While everyone else is shouting over each other about quantum torpedoes and dimensional barriers and exotic matter weapons, these humans are just sitting there, quietly, taking notes on what looks like actual paper. When was the last time anyone saw a paper in a galactic council meeting? One of them, a middle-aged guy with graying hair, is scribbling a notebook like he's in college lecture. Another one, a woman with sharp eyes and callous hands, is recording everything on some kind of primitive digital device. They're not panicking. They're not shouting suggestions. They're not even asking questions. They're just watching and listening, like students in the back of a classroom who are actually paying attention while everyone else is having a meltdown. Every now and then, they lean over to whisper something to each other, and you catch this little glimmer in their eyes that's almost like excitement, like they're not horrified by what they're hearing. They're interested. It's the kind of calm that's either incredibly brave or completely insane. And in a room full of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations losing their collective minds, that quiet confidence is starting to look pretty attractive. So when Captain David Miller stands up in that massive council chamber and volunteers his ship for a suicide reconnaissance mission to the recently fallen wreck system, the reaction is, well, imagine if your little brother offered to help you move a piano. The silence that follows is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every alien delegate in the room suddenly finds their data pads incredibly fascinating, and you can practically hear the mental calculations happening. How do we politely tell these newcomers they're about to die horribly? The Relentless, and that's really what Miller calls a ship, is basically the galactic equivalent of a pickup truck that's been in 3 accidents and held together with duct tape and stubborn determination. Picture Frankenstein's monster of human engineering welded, bolted, and occasionally glued to whatever alien technology they could buy, borrow, well, let's be honest, probably steal from various spaceports around the galaxy. The hull shows patches from at least 6 different civilizations. The engines are a mix of human fusion drives and Centauri plasma injectors that probably violate several laws of physics. And the weapon systems look like someone raided a military surplus store and just started mounting everything that looked dangerous. The galactic admirals are trying their absolute best to be diplomatic about this whole situation. Admiral Kythera keeps making these little clicking sounds with her mandibles that her species makes when they're trying not to laugh, while the hegemony representatives are having rapid-fire conversations in their high-pitched language that definitely translates to something like, should we tell them? Or just let natural selection handle this? You can see it written all over their faces, or whatever passes for faces in their various species. They think these primitive newcomers from a backwater solar system are about to become the most expensive space dust in galactic history. But here's the thing that none of these advanced civilizations understand, and it's going to be their biggest mistake. Humans didn't evolve on some peaceful garden world where the most dangerous thing was a mildly irritated herbivore having a bad day. Earth spent millions of years actively trying to murder everything living on it, and humans are the descendants of survivors who looked at this hostile nightmare planet and said, you know what? We're staying. Think about it for a second. While other species were developing on worlds with predictable seasons, stable climates, and wildlife that might give you a nasty bite at worst, Earth was throwing everything it had at early humans. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years and turned most of the planet into a frozen wasteland. Volcanic winters that blocked out the sun and made growing food nearly impossible. Asteroid impacts that wiped out entire ecosystems. Massive predators with teeth the size of kitchen knives. Plants that could kill you just by touching them. Diseases that could wipe out entire communities in weeks. And that's just the natural disasters. Earth's ecosystem was basically designed by someone with a really twisted sense of humor. Everything was either trying to eat you, poison you, paralyze you, or crush you. The oceans were full of creatures with enough venom to kill a dozen people. The land had predators that could smell you from miles away and track you for days. Even the weather was out to get you. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, heat waves that could literally cook you alive. Most species would have given up and moved to a nicer planet. Humans looked at all this and thought, challenge accepted. They didn't just survive Earth, they thrived on it. They turned survival into an art form, adaptation into a way of life, and somehow convinced themselves that living on a world that was constantly trying to kill them was not only normal, but actually kind of fun. Captain Miller's crew reflects this perfectly, and it shows in everything they do. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Robert Johnson, is a veteran of the Europa mining wars. And when I say veteran, I mean this guy has seen more real combat than most of these galactic admirals see in their entire centuries-long careers. The Europa conflicts weren't some genteel space battle with rules and proper protocols. They were brutal, close-quarters fights in asteroid mines where one mistake meant everyone died horribly in the vacuum of space. These aren't wide-eyed explorers on their first space adventure, taking selfies with alien monuments and collecting souvenirs. These are the direct descendants of a species that spent their entire evolutionary history looking at impossible odds and responded with, hold my beer and watch this. They're people whose ancestors survived the Black Death, the Little Ice Age, World Wars, and nuclear standoffs, then decided that wasn't exciting enough and started colonizing other planets that were just as hostile as Earth, only with less oxygen and more radiation. When Miller's crew looks at the Devourer threat, they don't see an unstoppable force that's conquered half the galaxy. They see Tuesday. When the Relentless drops out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vrex system, the first thing that hits you is the absolute silence. Space is always quiet, sure, but this is different. It's the kind of silence you feel in your bones, the absence of something that should be there. The Vrex were known throughout the galaxy for their constant subspace chatter, their trading networks that never slept, their colonies that beam music and art across dozens of star systems. Now there's nothing but the cold whisper of solar wind and the faint radiation signatures of a dead system. As they get close to the homeworld, the crew starts getting their first real look at what the Devourers actually do to a planet. And it's worse than anyone imagined. The Vrex homeworld, once a garden paradise with crystal cities floating above purple oceans, has been stripped down to bare bedrock. The entire planet looks like someone took a giant potato peeler to it and methodically removed every single layer of life. The oceans are gone, evaporated, or consumed. The atmosphere is a thin shell of leftover gases that can't sustain anything more complex than basic chemistry. But the really disturbing part is the geometric patterns carved into the planet's surface. They're not random destruction. They're precise, mathematical, almost artistic in their horrible efficiency. Perfect spirals and hexagonal grids where Devourer harvesters methodically consumed every organic molecule, every drop of water, every breath of air that once supported billions of living beings. It's like looking at a massive surgical scar that covers an entire world. Jesus, whispers Communications Officer Patricia Walsh, her face pale as she stares at the tactical display. They turn the whole planet into a mining operation. Before Captain Miller can respond, every alarm on the bridge starts screaming at once. The sensor operator, a kid from New Texas named Billy Henderson, looks up from his station with eyes the size of dinner plates. Captain, I'm reading 300 contacts. Bio ships, each one the size of Manhattan, and they're all heading straight for us. Through the viewports, you can actually see them coming, massive organic vessels that pulse with bioluminescent patterns like deep-sea creatures from Earth's worst nightmares. They move with an alien grace that's both beautiful and terrifying, flowing through space like schools of predatory fish that happen to be the size of city blocks. Each one is unique, covered in what looks like living coral and metal fused together, with weapon ports that open and close like breathing mouths. Any sane crew would have jumped back to hyperspace immediately. The Relentless is one ship against 300, outnumbered so badly that Hopeless doesn't even begin to cover it. Standard military doctrine from every civilization in the galaxy says you gather intel from a safe distance, report back to command, and let someone with bigger guns handle the actual fighting. Instead, Captain Miller leans back in his command chair and does something that would give galactic military strategists heart attacks. He orders a direct attack run on the largest Devourer construct, a massive bioship that looks like someone crossed a cathedral with jellyfish and scaled it up to the size of a small moon. All hands, battle stations, Miller announces over the intercom. His voice is calm as if he's ordering lunch. We're going in hot and heavy. Billy, give me everything we got on that big, ugly one in the center. Patricia, start recording everything. Command's going to want to see this. Engineering, I need every ounce of power you can squeeze out of those reactors. His crew doesn't panic. They don't question the order. They don't even look particularly surprised. They just get to work with the kind of calm professionalism that other species mistake for either incredible bravery or complete insanity. The truth is, it's neither. This is just Tuesday for a species that's been fighting hopeless battles since their ancestors learned to make sharp sticks and decided that the giant predators with foot-long teeth looked like they needed attitude adjustments. Lieutenant Johnson starts cycling through weapons systems with the practice efficiency of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. Captain, magnetic accelerator cannons are charged and ready. Missile tubes are loaded with our special surprises. Point defense systems are online. The first human weapons to hit Devourer hulls are beautifully, almost insultingly simple. Chunks of tungsten and depleted uranium accelerated to ridiculous speeds by magnetic coils. While every other civilization in the galaxy has moved on to exotic energy weapons, quantum disruptors, and reality-bending technologies that require PhDs in theoretical physics just to operate Humans have perfected the ancient art of making really hard things move really fast. It's the same principle behind every weapon humans have ever invented, from throwing rocks to nuclear missiles. Find something that will cause damage, then figure out how to deliver it to the target faster and harder than the other guy can defend against it. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, especially when your enemy has spent millennia adapting to sophisticated attacks, but has never seen anyone just throw a rock hard enough to achieve relativistic velocities. The tungsten slugs hit the lead Devourer's ship at nearly 10% the speed of light, and the result is spectacular. The Devourer response hits the Relentless like a cosmic hurricane of pure destruction. We're talking about weapons that have turned entire star systems into lifeless husks, technology so advanced they might as well be magic to most civilizations. Plasma storms erupt around the human ship. Not just regular plasma, but weaponized stellar fire that burns at temperatures that would make the core of a sun jealous. These energy blasts should instantly vaporize anything smaller than a moon, turning metal into gas and gas into nothing at all. But that's just the opening act. Within seconds, biomechanical boarding tentacles start erupting from the Devourer's ships like massive parasitic worms. These things are the size of subway tunnels, covering what looks like living metal that pulses within sick, organic rhythm. They're designed to punch through hull plating like it's tissue paper, then flood the target vessel with consuming organisms that can break down and absorb anything they touch. Imagine a cross between a giant squid and a mining laser. Except it's alive, it's hungry. It wants to eat your entire ship from the inside out. Then come the neural disruptors, invisible waves of psychic energy that have broken the minds of countless enemy crews across the galaxy. These aren't just weapons that cause pain or confusion. They literally rewrite your brain, turning experienced warriors into gibbering wrecks who spend their last moments clawing at their own skulls. The Devourers have used these mind-breaking weapons to turn entire fleets against each other, watching civilized species destroy themselves in fits of engineered madness. Any normal ship would have been turned into expanding clouds of superheated gas within the first 10 seconds. But here's the thing about the Relentless. She wasn't built by normal engineers. She was designed and constructed by humans who spent their entire careers assuming that everything in the universe would try to kill them simultaneously, and they wanted to make sure their ship could handle at least 3 impossible disasters happening at the same time. Her hull isn't just armored. It's layered with redundant protective systems that would make a paranoid person weep with joy. Ablative plating that's designed to boil away under extreme heat, electromagnetic field generators that can deflect charged particles, and emergency bulkheads that can seal off entire sections of the ship faster than you can say catastrophic decompression. The life support systems have backups for the backups. The power grid can reroute around damage automatically. And every critical system has at least 2 completely different ways to accomplish the same job. But the real difference isn't the technology, it's the crew. When those biomechanical boarding tentacles breach the hull and start pumping and consuming organisms, they encounter something the Devourers have never seen before in their centuries of galactic conquest. Humans in full combat armor who fight with a combination of advanced technology and Stone Age ferocity that would make their caveman ancestors proud. Sergeant William Davis becomes a poster child for what happens when you corner a human and make them angry. Picture this guy. He's built like a linebacker, wearing power combat armor that makes him look like a walking tank, and he's carving through biomechanical monstrosities with a plasma cutter in one hand and a combat knife in the other. The plasma cutter is cutting through alien biotech like butter, while that knife, just a simple steel blade, is doing damage that the Devourer's adaptive algorithms can't even process. And the whole time, he's humming an old folk song his grandfather taught him during the Martian Rebellion, like he's doing yard work instead of fighting for his life. The Devourers are completely unprepared for this. They've conquered civilizations that fight with logic, strategy, and self-preservation instincts. When things get hopeless, civilized species surrender, retreat, or at least try to negotiate. They don't start singing family songs and treating Mortal Kombat like it's a particularly challenging home improvement project. For 18 straight hours, the battle rages through every corridor, compartment, and crawl space of the Relentless. Human crew members approach the boarding action like the world's most extreme renovation project. They're cutting through bulkheads with welding torches, sealing off sections with emergency foam, And when things get really bad, they just start detonating things and rebuilding whatever's left. It's controlled chaos that would make military strategists from other species write strongly worded reports about gross violations of accepted combat protocols. The Devourer's adaptive algorithms, designed to counter logical military responses and civilized warfare tactics, have absolutely no framework for dealing with enemies who respond to overwhelming odds by charging directly at whatever scares them most. Their hive mind intelligence keeps trying to process why these humans aren't following any recognizable patterns of behavior. Every time they adapt to a human tactic, the humans just do something completely different and inexplicable. It's like watching a chess master try to play against someone who keeps eating the pieces and drawing pictures on the board with crayon. The rules just don't apply anymore, and the Devourers are discovering that all their fancy technology and adaptive intelligence mean nothing when your opponent's basic strategy is hit it harder and see what breaks first. When the smoke finally clears and the last Devourer bio ship stops twitching, something absolutely unprecedented has happened in galactic history. The entire Devourer scout fleet has been completely destroyed. Not damaged, not scattered, not forced to retreat like every other engagement in the past 3 years. Destroyed, wiped out, turned into floating scrap metal and organic debris that's already starting to decay in the cold vacuum of space. Captain Miller's ship limps back toward the council station, looking like it went through an industrial blender operated by someone with serious anger management issues. The Relentless has hull breaches sealed with emergency foam that's hardened into these weird, lumpy patches all over her sides. Entire sections of her outer hull are just missing, replaced by makeshift plating that the crew welded on during the battle. One of her main engines is held together with what appears to be actual duct tape, and a lot of prayers to whatever gods watch over crazy humans in space. Half the crew is in medical bays, getting patched up by the ship's doctor, who's been working nonstop for 20 hours straight. Sergeant Davis has 17 stitches, 2 broken ribs, and a plasma burn on his left arm that he keeps insisting adds character. Lieutenant Johnson is nursing a concussion and what he cheerfully describes as the worst hangover of his life from neurofeedback, when he literally headbutted a Devourer mind control device until it stopped working. But here's the thing, they're alive. They're victorious. And most importantly, they brought back something that about to change the entire course of this war. Tactical data that proves the Devourers aren't actually unstoppable after all. You see, the Devourers had spent centuries optimizing themselves to prey on species that fought like reasonable, civilized beings. Think about it. Every other race in the galaxy approaches warfare with calculated risks, strategic withdrawals, and logical surrender protocols when defeat becomes mathematically inevitable. It's sensible. It's efficient. It minimizes casualties and preserves resources for future conflicts. When you're facing overwhelming odds and certain death, the smart move is to retreat, regroup, and live to fight another day. The Devourers built their entire strategy around this predictable behavior. Their adaptive algorithms were designed to counter logical military responses. Their psychological warfare-targeted species that valued self-preservation, and their overwhelming force projections were calculated to trigger those reasonable surrender protocols that kept casualties to acceptable levels. What they had absolutely no countermeasures for were opponents who looked at impossible situations and thought, well, this seems like a fun challenge. They had no framework for dealing with enemies who treated certain death as a personal insult and responded to overwhelming odds by getting genuinely offended that someone thought they couldn't handle it. Most importantly, they had never encountered a species that had somehow convinced itself that running directly toward a scary thing was not only a valid survival strategy, but actually the preferred one. The tactical data that Miller brings back reveals something incredible. The Devourer's adaptive systems actually break down when faced with truly irrational behavior. Their hive mind intelligence keeps trying to find patterns and logical responses, but humans don't operate on logic when they're backed into a corner. They operate on spite, stubbornness, and a weird evolutionary quirk that makes them more dangerous the worse things get. Within weeks of this discovery, something amazing starts happening across the galaxy. Human military advisors begin showing up on ships and stations throughout civilized space, teaching what they casually call applied problem solving to crews that previously thought warfare was supposed to follow rules and make sense. These aren't formal military academies with structured curricula and proper uniforms. These are basically humans showing up and saying, "Okay, forget everything you know about tactics, and let me tell you about the time we strapped rockets to a nuclear reactor and called a spaceship." The training sessions are absolutely chaotic. Picture a human instructor standing in front of a mixed class of crystalline beings, insectoid warriors and gas cloud entities, explaining concepts like, when in doubt, charge directly at the problem, and if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. The alien military officers are frantically taking notes while trying to process ideas that violate every principle of warfare they've ever learned. The Galactic Council, which had once viewed humanity as useful manual laborers at best, good for heavy lifting and dangerous mining operations, but not much else, now watches in absolute fascination as these Deathworlders methodically teach the galaxy's finest military minds how to fight a war they'd already given up for lost. Ancient warrior races that have perfected the art of combat over millennia are sitting in classrooms learning from a species that figured out space travel less than a century ago. The best part? In the human military archives, when strategists finally get around to filing their official reports on the Devourer conflict, they classify it under a designation that roughly translates to typical Tuesday morning engagement, not historic victory or pivotal battle that saved the galaxy. Just Tuesday morning. Because to humans, fighting impossible odds against terrifying enemies isn't legendary heroism. It's basically a normal work day. And that's how the galaxy learned that sometimes the best solution to an unstoppable force is an immovable object with a really bad attitude and a complete inability to recognize when it's supposed to quit.